My dad and I speak two different languages. It's funny because we've lived in the same house for most of my 24 years, but the communication gap might as well be an ocean. He speaks the language of concrete rebar and 2x4s. His world is built on things you can hold, things you can measure with a tape and level with your eye. My dad, Arthur Miller, is a retired construction foreman, all of 58 years old, and his hands tell the story of his life, callous strong and permanently stained with the ghost of hard work. He built things, real things, foundations, walls, roofs, things that keep the rain out and stand for decades. I, on the other hand, speak in a language of code, of Python scripts, database queries, and user interfaces. I'm a junior software developer. I build things too, but you can't touch them. They exist as elegant lines of logic on a screen, as seamless experiences on a phone, as invisible structures that move information from one side of the world to the other in the blink of an eye. My world is digital, abstract, and constantly changing. To my dad, it's basically magic, and he's deeply, fundamentally suspicious of all forms of magic. This difference between us, the tangible versus the digital, the old school versus the new wave, was the backdrop for everything. It wasn't a source of angry fights, not really. It was more like a constant low-grade static in our conversations. He'd ask me how my day was, and I'd try to explain a complex bug I'd fixed. I'd see his eyes glaze over as I talked about recursive functions, and he'd just nod and say, "Well, as long as they're paying you for it, son." Then he'd launch into a detailed story about restaining the back deck, the specific grit of sandpaper he used, the way the wood soaked up the sealant. And it would be my turn to nod, trying to sound interested in a world that felt as foreign to me as mine did to him. We loved each other, of course. That was never in question. But we didn't always understand each other. And nowhere was this gap more obvious than when it came to my passion, my cause, the thing that filled my weekends and my spare thoughts. It wasn't another piece of software or a new coding language. It was the ocean. Specifically, it was the Ocean Preservation Alliance. I'd found them online about 2 years ago. They were a mid-sized nonprofit, not one of the massive global organizations, which is what I liked about them. They felt focused. They organized local beach cleanups, they advocated for marine protected areas, and they funded small-scale research on coral bleaching. To me, it was the perfect blend of direct, tangible action, the kind my dad would theoretically respect, and a larger, more abstract goal, protecting an ecosystem that felt both infinite and incredibly fragile. My dad just couldn't wrap his head around it. He grew up in the Midwest, 1,000 miles from the nearest coastline. To him, the ocean was something you saw on vacation, a big blue wet thing you sat next to for a week before driving home. The idea of it needing to be saved was as bizarre as needing to save the sky. It was just there. My involvement started small. I donated a few bucks here and there. Then I started volunteering. On the third Saturday of every month, I'd get up at the crack of dawn, pull on old jeans and a pair of work gloves, and drive an hour to the coast. I'd spend the next 4 hours with a group of other volunteers walking along the shoreline with a big bag picking up plastic bottles, old fishing nets, styrofoam cups, and a million other pieces of trash that had washed ashore. It was grueling work sometimes. The sun would beat down, the bag would get heavy, and the sheer volume of garbage could be disheartening. But I loved it. I loved the feeling of the sea breeze, the sound of the gulls, and the simple, undeniable satisfaction of looking back at a stretch of clean sand that was filthy just an hour before. It was real. It was tangible. I could see the difference I was making. I thought maybe this was the part my dad could understand. I tried to explain it to him once. I came home tired but happy, my shoes full of sand. He was in the garage, his sanctuary, a place that smelled of sawdust and motor oil. He was sharpening a set of chisels, the rhythmic scrape of steel on stone filling the air. "Hey, Dad," I said, leaning against the doorframe. He glanced up, his focus still on the blade. "Hey, Santiago, how was saving the world?" There was a little smirk on his face. It wasn't mean exactly, more bemused. "It was good," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "We cleared a whole section of the North Beach, filled about 30 bags." He nodded slowly, testing the chisel's edge with his thumb. 30 bags, huh? And what happens next week? The tide comes in, brings a bunch of new junk with it. Seems like you're just shoveling sand against the tide, kid. It's not about a permanent fix in one day, I argued gently. It's about showing up. It's about mitigating the damage. Every piece of plastic we remove is one less piece a turtle or a seabird can swallow. Turtles, he muttered, shaking his head as he picked up the next chisel. You spend your whole week staring at a computer screen, and then you spend your whole Saturday picking up other people's garbage for free to save a turtle. Doesn't make a lick of sense to me. And that was that. The conversation was over. He wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. He just genuinely, truly did not get it. In his world, you work, you get paid, you come home. You fix your own roof. You take care of your own yard. You don't drive 50 miles to clean up a public beach for animals you'll never meet. It was a waste of time, a waste of gas, and a fundamental misallocation of effort. My work as a software developer only made it worse in his eyes. Since I was financially independent, living at home more to save for a down payment than out of necessity, he couldn't use the old get a real job argument. But he saw my passion for the ocean as an extension of my digital, abstract life. It was an idea, not a job. It was a hobby, not a career. It was a luxury for a kid who didn't have a mortgage or a family to worry about. To bridge the gap, I even tried to bring my world into his. I started using my coding skills to help the Alliance. In my spare time, I built a simple mobile app for them. It let volunteers log the type and quantity of trash they collected, automatically tagging the location. It was a small thing, but it helped them gather much better data for their reports and grant proposals. I was proud of it. It was the perfect synthesis of my two worlds. I was building something intangible to create a tangible result. I showed it to my dad one evening. I was excited, buzzing with that unique thrill of seeing a project come to life. Look, I said, holding out my phone. I built this for the Ocean Preservation Alliance. When we do cleanups, we can track everything we find. See, it drops a pin on the map and uploads the data to their server. It'll help them see where the worst pollution spots are. He squinted at the screen. He took the phone from me, his big rough fingers looking clumsy and out of place on the sleek glass. He tapped a button, then another. He grunted. So, it's a garbage counter, he said, handing the phone back. Well, yeah, I guess I said, my enthusiasm deflating. It's a data collection tool. Right, a data collection tool. For garbage. He shook his head and picked up the TV remote. I just don't get it, Santiago. All these apps, this online stuff, it's all just noise. You know how I manage my money. I knew. Oh, I knew. You get paper statements in the mail. Damn right I do, he said, a note of pride in his voice. Once a month, the bank sends me a letter. I open it. I read it. I see where my money went. It's real. It's on paper. I don't need some fancy app for that. I don't trust it. Anything can happen with that online nonsense. Hackers, scams. It's a mess. He had a deep-seated distrust of the entire digital financial world. He still wrote checks at the grocery store. The idea of an online bank like the one I used was horrifying to him. He couldn't comprehend a bank that didn't have a physical brick-and-mortar building you could walk into and yell at someone if you needed to. My Chime account. My credit cards linked to my phone. My entire financial life lived through a series of secure logins. It was his version of a nightmare. So we existed in our separate spheres, orbiting each other in the same house. The practical, skeptical, retired construction foreman who believed only in what he could build with his own two hands. And his son, the 24-year-old idealist who built worlds out of code and spent his weekends trying to fix a problem so vast it was almost incomprehensible. He saw my passion as a frivolous waste of time and money. I saw his skepticism as a relic of a bygone era. We were at a stalemate. A quiet, loving, deeply frustrating stalemate. And I had no idea that a simple sticker and a family dinner were about to give me the opportunity to bridge that gap, not with words or logic, but with a quiet act of rebellion that would speak my dad's language better than I ever could. The thing about a stalemate is that it only holds as long as both sides respect the unspoken rules of engagement. For months, my dad and I had maintained this fragile peace. He wouldn't lecture me about my online nonsense, and I wouldn't try to explain the intricacies of data-driven conservation efforts to him. We'd talk about the weather, about the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, about the ridiculously high price of lumber. We'd talk about anything and everything except the one thing that defined me and the one thing that confused him. It was a comfortable, if hollow, truce. And then came the spaghetti. The day everything changed was a Tuesday. My mom had made her famous spaghetti and meatballs a dish so legendary it could broker peace treaties. My dad was in a good mood. He'd spent the afternoon fixing a neighbor's wobbly porch railing and was basking in the glow of a job well done, a tangible problem solved with tangible tools. He was in his element. I'd been working late on a project and my laptop was still sitting on the corner of the dining room table closed. Usually I'd have put it away in my room, but I was rushing to help set the table. And on the lid of that laptop was a single 3-inch vinyl sticker. It was a simple, elegant design, a stylized blue wave cresting over the words, Ocean Preservation Alliance. It was a small badge of honor, a quiet declaration of where my loyalties lay. I'd had it on there for months. My dad had probably seen it 100 times and never said a word. But tonight was different. We were halfway through dinner. My dad was telling a long, rambling story about a concrete pour that went wrong back in '98. I was listening, nodding at the right moments when he paused to take a drink of water. His eyes drifted over my shoulder and landed on my laptop. He stopped his glass held halfway to his lips. "What's that thing again?" he asked, gesturing with his chin. I turned. "What thing?" "That sticker. On your computer machine, the ocean thing." A small internal alarm went off. This was a breach of protocol. We didn't talk about the ocean thing. "Oh, that's the logo for the Ocean Preservation Alliance," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "The group I volunteer with." "Right. The garbage collectors," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A reduction of everything I did to its most basic and, in his mind, menial component. I felt my jaw tighten. "We do more than just collect trash, Dad. We do water quality testing, reef monitoring, educational outreach." He waved a dismissive hand, a meatball speared on the end of his fork. Yeah, all that stuff. "I've got a question for you, Santiago. How much does it cost?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean this alliance," he said, saying the word like it was something foreign and faintly ridiculous. "They gotta pay for their boats, their little water testing kits, their fancy stickers. Where does that money come from?" "Donations mostly," I said, starting to feel defensive. "Grants. People who care about the cause give what they can." He let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of sound that cuts. People give them money to go pick up bottles on the beach. He shook his head, looking at me as if I'd just tried to explain that the sky was plaid. What a waste of time and money. And there it was. The two phrases that to him were the ultimate condemnation. Waste of time. Waste of money. In his world built on budgets and blueprints and billable hours, there was no greater sin. Time was for working, for building, for earning. Money was for paying the mortgage, for saving for retirement, for buying things that lasted. The idea of pouring either of those precious resources into something as abstract as ocean health was utterly baffling to him. My mom shot him a look, a silent plea to drop it, but he was on a roll. He'd breached the treaty, and now he was marching his troops straight into my territory. "I'm serious," he continued, leaning forward now, his voice getting louder. "You spend your whole Saturday out there getting sunburned picking up other people's garbage. For free. And then, on top of that, people are just mailing these guys checks. What does it actually accomplish, huh? You save a few turtles from a plastic bag. Great. A week later, 1,000 more bags wash up on the shore. You're trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon, kid. It's a fool's game." Every word was a small, sharp jab. He wasn't just attacking a charity I liked. He was attacking my judgment, my values, me. He was doing it here at the dinner table in front of my mom, turning our family meal into a courtroom where my passions were on trial. I tried to fight back, but my voice felt weak. "It makes a difference, Dad. It raises awareness. It gets data that can be used to push for policy changes. It's not just about the one bag you pick up, it's about making a bunch of kids with laptops feel good about themselves," he interrupted, pointing his fork at my computer. "They sell you a sticker. You put it on your fancy machine and you feel like you've done something important. Meanwhile, the real world keeps turning. People gotta eat. Roofs gotta be fixed. That's real. That helps people. This," he gestured vaguely toward the sticker again, "this is a hobby, a very expensive, very pointless hobby." I put my own fork down. My appetite was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy knot in my stomach. The spaghetti I'd been enjoying moments before now looked like a tangled mess on my plate. I looked at him, at this 58-year-old man who had worked his entire life with his hands, who saw the world in terms of concrete and rebar profit and loss, and I realized he would never, ever get it. I could show him 1,000 charts. I could read him 100 scientific papers. I could spend the rest of my life trying to explain the intricate, delicate balance of marine ecosystems, and he would still just see a bunch of kids picking up garbage. The worst part was the look in his eyes. It wasn't anger, it was pity. He genuinely thought I was being duped. A smart kid, his 24-year-old son, who was good with computers but hopelessly naive about how the world really worked. He saw my passion not as a strength, but as a vulnerability. I didn't say another word. I just sat there feeling the heat rise in my face, my silence a white flag of surrender. I couldn't win. Arguing with him was like arguing with a brick wall, a stubborn, well-meaning, deeply frustrating brick wall that happened to be my father. The rest of dinner was eaten in a tense, awkward silence. My mom tried to start a new conversation about the weather, but the damage was done. The air was thick with my unspoken frustration and his smug certainty. As soon as I could, I excused myself, cleared my plate, and retreated to my room. I shut the door and leaned against it, my heart still pounding with a mixture of anger and humiliation. He had belittled the one thing outside of my career that gave me a true sense of purpose. He had called my contribution, my work, my passion, a waste of time and a waste of money. I walked over to my desk and sat down staring at the screen of my personal laptop, the same one that had been sitting on the dinner table. My mind was racing. For years, I had tried to earn his respect on his terms. I got a good degree. I landed a solid job as a junior software developer. I was financially independent, saving my money, proving I was a responsible adult. But it wasn't enough. As long as I poured my own time and my own resources into something he didn't understand, I would always be the naive kid playing a fool's game in his eyes. He didn't respect the work. He didn't respect the data. He didn't respect the mission. So what did he respect? The answer hit me with the force of a physical blow. It was so simple, so obvious. He respected paper. He respected statements. He respected tangible proof of transactions. I thought of something he often said about his own finances. Once a month, the bank sends me a letter. I open it. I read it. I see where my money went. It's real. And his biggest insult, a waste of money. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. An idea began to form in my mind. It was audacious. It was a little bit devious. And it was perfect. He thought the Ocean Preservation Alliance was a waste of money. Fine. He thought people who donated were fools. Okay. He wanted to see where money went, written down on a piece of paper, sent to him in the mail. I could arrange that. I wouldn't argue with him anymore. I wouldn't try to change his mind with logic or emotion. That was my world. I was going to respond in his world. I was going to use his own logic, his own system of beliefs to make my point. He had dismissed my passion as a frivolous expense. I was about to turn that passion into a line item, and I was going to make sure the bill was sent directly to him. His name, his address, his reality. But it would be my money, my message, my move. The stalemate was over. He had fired the first shot, and now I was going to return fire not with a cannon, but with a quiet, perfectly addressed, paper-thin torpedo. The next evening, the house was quiet. My mom was at her book club, and my dad was in the living room watching some old Western on TV. The sound of distant crackling audio barely reached my room. It was T-minus 7 days. Showtime. I sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor washing over my face. My heart was thumping a steady, determined rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't about anger anymore. The humiliation from the night before had cooled and hardened into something else: resolve. I wasn't lashing out. I was executing a plan. I opened a fresh browser window and typed the name of the charity into the search bar: Ocean Preservation Alliance. Their official website popped up clean and professional, filled with images of pristine coral reefs and majestic sea turtles, the very things my father had dismissed with a wave of his hand. I clicked the big, bright blue Donate button in the top right corner. The donation page loaded. It had all the standard options: one-time, monthly, different preset amounts. I scrolled past them. I wasn't just sending them money. I was sending a message. And for that, I needed a specific tool. My eyes scanned the page, and there it was, a small checkbox with a line of text next to it that made my pulse quicken. Dedicate my donation in honor or in memory of someone. I clicked it. A new set of fields appeared on the screen. It was beautiful, so simple, so elegant, so perfectly designed for my purpose. The page was split into two distinct sections. The first was billing details. This was for me. I pulled out my wallet and took out the debit card linked to my personal savings account, an account with a modern online bank that my dad had once called Monopoly Money. It had no connection to him, no paper trail that would ever cross his desk. I carefully typed in my name, Santiago Miller, my card number, and the expiration date. I used our family address for the billing. The charge was electronic, so it wouldn't create a paper trail I didn't want. Then I moved to the second section. It was titled Honorary Donor Information. This part was for him. A little thrill, cold and sharp, went through me. This was the masterstroke. This was the logical loophole he would never see coming. In the field for honoree name, I typed Arthur Miller. In the field for honoree address, I typed our home address, the one he'd owned for 25 years, the place where he sorted his mail every single day. There was an option to send an e-card, which I ignored. An email was too easy to delete, too intangible. No, I needed something he could hold in his hands. I needed paper. I needed ink. I needed the United States Postal Service to be my accomplice. The charity's FAQ page had assured me that for donations of a certain size, a formal letter of thanks was sent by standard post. Now for the amount. It had to be just right. Too little, and it might not trigger a physical letter. Too much, and it might trigger a personal phone call from their development director, which would blow the whole thing. I settled on the perfect number, $250. It was a significant amount for me, a real chunk of my savings. It was enough to prove the waste of money was a serious investment on my part. And according to their donor guidelines, it was the exact minimum to automatically generate a formal thank you letter. My finger hovered over the final button. Submit donation. I took a deep breath. This was it. I was using my own hard-earned money from my software developer job to make a point. I was weaponizing his own skepticism. He believed in paper trails. I was creating one. He thought my passion was a waste of money. I was about to make him the official patron of that passion. I clicked the button. A confirmation page appeared. Thank you, Santiago. Your generous gift in honor of Arthur Miller has been processed. It was done. The torpedo was in the water. Now all I had to do was wait. The next 7 days were an exercise in patience. I went to work. I came home. I made small talk with my dad about sports, about the weather, about the leaky faucet in the bathroom. I acted as if nothing had happened. The dinner table incident was never mentioned again. In his mind, he had won. He had put his naive son in his place, and I had quietly accepted it. He had no idea that a thank you letter, a small paper-based testament to his own supposed generosity, was making its way through the mail system, getting closer and closer to our mailbox. Then came day 0. I was working from home that day, sitting in my room with my headphones on, when I heard the familiar sound of the front door opening and closing, followed by the soft thud of mail being dropped on the entryway table. It was a daily ritual. My dad, Arthur, age 58, and a creature of habit, always got the mail at precisely 2:30 p.m. I took off my headphones and listened. I heard the shuffling of envelopes, the tearing of junk mail. Then a pause. A long, profound silence. It was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Finally, I heard his footsteps. They weren't his usual casual shuffle. They were deliberate, measured, walking down the hall directly to my room. He didn't knock. The door swung open, and there he stood, his face a perfect mask of utter confusion. In his hand, he held a single cream-colored envelope and the letter that had been inside it. "Santiago," he said, his voice flat. "What is this?" He held up the letter. I could see the Ocean Preservation Alliance logo at the top. It was beautiful. I feigned ignorance, squinting at the paper from across the room. "I don't know, what is it?" "It's a letter," he said, stepping into my room. "Addressed to me, from that turtle club you like." He handed it to me. I took it, pretending to read it for the first time. It formally thanked Mr. Arthur Miller for his recent generous donation of $250. It talked about how his contribution would help fund critical marine habitat restoration. I handed it back to him, shrugging. "Looks like a thank you letter. Did you donate to them?" His eyes narrowed. "No, Santiago, I did not donate to them. That's the point. This is some kind of scam. They get your name, send you a fake thank you, and hope you're old and confused enough to send them real money next time." I had to give him credit. It was a plausible theory for his world. "I guess that could be it," I said, trying to keep my face neutral. "It's not could be, it is," he said, his conviction growing. He waved the letter in the air. "This is nonsense. $250, I'd know if I spent that kind of money on something like this." He tapped his temple. "It's all up here. And more importantly," he pointed a stern finger at me, "it's all on the paper." And there it was. The opening I had been waiting for. "I'll prove it," he declared, his confidence returning. "My bank statement comes next week. I'll go through it line by line. There will be no charge from any Ocean Preservation Alliance. That'll be the end of it. Just a mistake. Or fraud." He started to turn away, ready to dismiss the whole affair as a clerical error in a world he didn't trust. But then I saw something else flicker across his face, a shadow of genuine concern. What if it was fraud? What if someone had his information? He was a retired construction foreman who valued his financial security above all else. The thought of identity theft was a real fear for him. And in that moment, I knew the prank had run its course. The point wasn't to make him worry. The point was to make him understand. "Dad," I said, my voice calm and quiet. He stopped and turned back to me. "It's not a scam," I said. "And it's not a mistake, and you won't find it on your bank statement." He stared at me, his brow furrowed in deeper confusion. "Then what is it?" I took a breath. "I made the donation," I said. "I paid the $250 with my own money, from my own account." He was speechless. He just looked back and forth between the letter in his hand and my face, trying to make the pieces fit. You paid it. Then why is my name on it? Why did they send it to me?" "Because," I explained, leaning forward, "when you donate on their website, there's a feature. It's called Donate in Honor of Someone. I put my credit card information in the billing section, and I put your name, Arthur Miller, in the honorary donor section." I let the words hang in the air. I watched his face as the gears turned in his mind. I could almost see the logic clicking into place, the tumblers of his understanding falling one by one, the separation of billing and recognition, the money coming from one place, the credit going to another, the fact that he hadn't been scammed, that he hadn't lost a single cent. His son, whom he had called a fool for wasting time and money on a cause, had just spent a significant amount of his own hard-earned money specifically to put his father's name on that very cause. The insult, a waste of money, had been answered not with words, but with a receipt for $250 delivered directly to him. He looked down at the letter again, but he wasn't seeing it as a scam anymore. He was seeing it for what it was, a move in a game he didn't know we were playing. A clever, irrefutable, and deeply personal checkmate. He didn't apologize. I never expected him to. Arthur Miller wasn't the kind of man who apologized for his opinions, but the look of dismissive pity was gone from his eyes. It was replaced by something I had been trying to earn for years, something I hadn't been able to get with good grades, a good job, or logical arguments. It was a flicker of grudging respect. He folded the letter neatly and tucked it into his shirt pocket. $250, he said almost to himself, shaking his head slowly. He looked at me, and for the first time, he wasn't looking at his naive kid. He was looking at an adult who had just outmaneuvered him using a system he didn't understand. "Don't do it again," he said, but there was no heat in his voice. He turned and walked out of my room, leaving the door open behind him. That was the victory. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet. It was the absence of his mockery. It was the new space that had opened up between us. He still might think saving the oceans was a waste of time, but he could no longer say it was a waste of my money. Because I had proven that my money was mine to spend and I was willing to put it exactly where my mouth was. I had used his world of paper and transactions to validate my world of passion and ideals. And in doing so, I hadn't just made a point. I had changed the terms of our relationship forever. He hadn't been scammed, but he had been schooled. And I, his 24-year-old son, had finally become the teacher.